Hello, welcome back. This week is Unit 9. We will be talking about languages, nationalities, and everyday activities. For example, I am from England, so I am British. Every day I watch British television. That's an example of what we will be talking about today. Let's move on to page 79. Let's look at the vocabulary on page 79. Page 79. There are 15 expressions for you to learn. Let's start with number 1. Call. The action is call. Number 2. Cook. Number 3. Drive. Number 4. Eat. Number 5. Listen. Listen to. Number 6. Paint. Number 7. Play. Number 8. Read. Number 9. Sell. Number 10. Shop. Number 11. Sing. Number 12. Speak. Number 13. Visit. 14. Watch. And 15. Work. Are there any alternative answers to some of these pictures? Number 9. It looks like he is working too, right? Work, sell, demonstrate. Number 12. Speak, say, tell, talk. These are all similar but have different uses. We can talk more about them later on. The form of the vocabulary that we will be using will be ing, gerund. So we can ask the question, what is he or she doing? And the answer is, he or she is ing. Ing. Number 1, what is she doing? She is calling. That's right. Number 2, what is he doing? He is cooking. And number 3, what is she doing? She is driving. Number 4, he is eating. Number 5, she is listening to music. Number 6, he is painting his house. Number 7, he is playing the violin. Number 8, he is reading the newspaper. Number 9, he is selling cars. Number 10, she is shopping. 11, she is singing. Number 12, he is speaking. Number 13, she is visiting. I think she is visiting the lady, or she is visiting her children. Number 14, he is watching a TV show. He is watching the TV. And 15, she is working on the computer. She is working in her office. Very good. Let's move on to page 80. Page 80 introduces a conversation where we use people's nationalities. We talk about where they live. We talk about their activities. Let's look at the picture. There's a man being interviewed. Where is he? He's in Rome. We can see the sign, Rome. Okay, let's read the conversation, A and B. A. What's your name? B. My name is Antonio. Where do you live? I live in Rome. What language do you speak? I speak Italian. Tell me, what do you do every day? I eat Italian food. I sing Italian songs. And I watch Italian TV shows. Mwah, mamma mia. Okay, so that's the example. So there are 4 things that we are talking about. The name, where they live, the language they speak, and the activities they do. So the 4 questions that you would be asking are, what's your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? What is your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Let's have a look at some examples of other people in other countries. Our first example, number 1, is Carmen. Carmen. Carmen is in Madrid and she speaks Spanish. So, the first question, what's your name? My name is Carmen. Where do you live? I live in Madrid. What language do you speak? I speak Spanish. Hola. What do you do every day? I eat Spanish food. I sing Spanish songs. And I watch Spanish TV shows. Very interesting. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I will read you the questions, give you a chance to pause the video, try to answer, and then I will give you the answers at the end. Number 2. What is your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Number 3. What is your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? What do you do every day? Number 4. What are your names? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Number 5. What is your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? What do you do every day? And number 6. What are your names? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Very good. Let's have a look at the answers. Number 2. What's your name? My name is Kenji. Where do you live? I live in Tokyo. What language do you speak? I speak Japanese. What do you do every day? I eat Japanese food. I sing Japanese songs. And I watch Japanese TV shows. Number 3. What's your name? My name is Nicole. Where do you live? I live in Paris. What language do you speak? I speak French. Tell me, what do you do every day? I eat French food. I sing French songs. And I watch French TV shows. Number 4. This one is a little bit different because there are 2 people. What are your names? Our names are Eric and Monica. Where do you live? We live in Berlin. What language do you speak? We speak German. And what do you do every day? We eat German food. We sing German songs. And we watch German TV shows. Number 5 would be, I think, easy for you, ladies. What's your name? My name is Jahi. Where do you live? I live in Seoul. What language do you speak? I speak Korean. What do you do every day? I eat Korean food. I sing Korean songs. And I watch Korean TV shows. And the last one, number 6. What are your names? Our names are Boris and Natasha. Where do you live? We live in Moscow. What language do you speak? We speak Russian. Tell me, what do you do every day? We eat Russian food, we sing Russian songs, and we watch Russian TV shows. Okay, that's the end of page 80. Page 81 follows a similar pattern, except this time we are talking about another person. We are using the third person, he, she, his, her, etc. At the top of the page, it gives you the structure. So instead of saying, where do you live? It says, where does he live? Answer, he lives. What do you do every day? This question, what does he do every day? Or what does she do every day? Let's have a look at the example conversation. A. What's his name? His name is Miguel. Where does he live? He lives in Mexico City. What language does he speak? He speaks Spanish. What does he do every day? He eats Mexican food. He reads Mexican newspapers. And he listens to Mexican music. Okay. So from this example, you can already see there are some differences, not just the grammar, but if we look at the language, Spanish. But where does he live? Mexico. Mexico doesn't speak Mexican? No. Mexican is a nationality, but it's not a language. We do have Mexican food, there is Mexican music, there is Mexican fashion, Mexican people, but the language is Spanish. So he speaks Spanish, but he eats, reads, listens to Mexican. Okay. So the questions for page 81, the 4 questions. What's his or her name? Where does he, she live? What language does he, she speak? What does he, she do every day? So very similar questions, but now it is he, she, instead of I and you, or they. Okay, so at the bottom of page 81, there are 6 more people to ask questions about. So number 1, what is her name? Her name is Kate. Where does she live? She lives in Toronto. What language does she speak? There are 2 choices, English, Canadian. Canadian is not a language. It is a nationality. It is an adjective of food and fashion and music, but it is not a language. So the answer is English. She speaks English. What does she do every day? She listens to Canadian music. She eats Canadian food. She reads Canadian newspapers. Sometimes I think it's a better idea to update some of these answers. For example, she eats Canadian food. That's fine. She reads Canadian websites. Maybe that's a better option. She listens to Canadian music. That is fine. How about number 2? Number 2 has some tricky pronunciation. What is his name? His name is Carlos. His name is Carlos. Where does he live? He lives in San Juan. San Juan. More of a H sound than a J sound. San Juan? No. San Juan. What language does he speak? He speaks Spanish. That's right. Spanish is the language of Puerto Rico. Okay? So Puerto Rican is the nationality, the adjective for his activities. So what does he do every day? He eats Puerto Rican food. He reads Puerto Rican news. And he listens to Puerto Rican music. Number 3, we have Anna. What is her name? Her name is Anna. Where does she live? She lives in Athens. What language does she speak? She speaks Greek. And what does she do every day? She eats Greek food. She reads Greek news. And she listens to Greek music. Number 4. What is his name? His name is Ming. Where does he live? He lives in Hong Kong. What language does he speak? He speaks Chinese. What does he do every day? He eats Chinese food. He reads Chinese news. And he listens to Chinese music. Number 5. What is her name? Her name is Sonia. Where does she live? She lives in Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro. What language does she speak? She speaks Portuguese. Portuguese, the same language in Portugal. But she is not from Portugal. She is from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. That's right, she speaks Portuguese. What does she do every day? She eats Brazilian food. She listens to Brazilian news. And she watches Brazilian TV shows. And reads Brazilian news. And number 6. What is his name? His name is Omar. Where does he live? He lives in Cairo. What language does he speak? He speaks Arabic. And what does he do every day? He eats Egyptian food, he listens to Egyptian music, and he reads Egyptian news. Excellent. Well done. That's the end of page 81. Let's look at some more examples of people's nationality, where they are from, and what they do. That is on page 82. The top of page 82 introduces the question structure. First, where do I live? Where do we live? Where do you live? Where do they live? What does he live? Where does she live? And where does it live? And the answers: I live, we live, you live, he lives, she lives, and it lives. The other question: what do I do every day? What do we do? What do they do? What does he do? And what does she do? Let's look at some examples of people at the bottom of the page. Where does Linda live? She lives in London. What does she do? She works in a library. That's for one person. If there are two people, where do Walter and Wendy live? They live in Washington, D.C. What do? They work in a post office. They work in a post office. And here you can see lots of people all doing different jobs in different places. We can see Linda, and over there we can see Walter and Wendy. I will read them for you, and then you can practice asking questions about these people. My name is Linda. I live in London. I work in a library. My name is Brian. I live in Boston. I work in a bank. We are Walter and Wendy. We live in Washington, D.C. We work in an office. My name is Bob. I live in Buffalo. I drive a bus. We are Howard and Henry. We live in Honolulu. We paint houses. My name is Tina. I live in Tampa. I drive a taxi. We're Carol and Ray. We live in Cleveland. We cook in a restaurant. My name is Susan. I live in San Diego. I sell cars. My name is Victor. I live in Vancouver. I play the violin. So you could choose any of these people to ask questions about. For example, where do Howard and Henry live? That's right, they live in Honolulu. What do? They paint houses. How about Susan? Where does Susan live? She lives in San Diego. What does she do? She sells cars. Okay, so feel free to pause the video, use these people to ask and answer more questions. Let's move on to page 83. Page 83 is a reading activity. It tells you the story of Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo and their son Joe Dicarlo. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo. So at first, it shows you the pictures. And we can see in the pictures that they are doing different activities. The very first picture, Buongiorno. What is that? I think they are speaking Italian. That's right. So maybe in the next picture, they are reading Italian newspapers, maybe? Picture after that shows an old radio. Maybe they listen to Italian radio, maybe? And after that, they are shopping. Looks like a small grocery store. Maybe it's an Italian grocery store. And the last picture, they are sitting around a table talking with their friends. I wonder what they're talking about. In the next set of pictures, we are introduced to Joe. In the very first picture, hi! Joe is speaking English. In the next picture, Joe is also reading a newspaper, but perhaps it is an American newspaper. And then in the next picture, maybe he's listening to American or English music. The picture after that, he's going shopping. It's not a small grocery store. It's a big supermarket, big shopping mall. And in the last picture, similar to his parents, he's talking with friends. I wonder what they are talking about. In the last set of pictures, we can see Joe and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo, talking on the telephone. Do you think they use English or Italian? Or both? Same when Joe visits his parents. Are they speaking English or Italian? In the last picture, Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo do not look very happy. I wonder what they are worried about. Let's have a look and read the story together. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo are upset about their son Joe. He lives in a small suburb outside the city. He speaks a little Italian, but usually he speaks English. He reads American newspapers. He listens to American radio programs. He shops at big suburban supermarkets and shopping malls. And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks English. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo live in an old Italian neighborhood in New York City. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. They read the Italian newspaper. They listen to Italian radio programs. They shop at the Italian grocery store around the corner from their apartment building. And every day they visit their friends and neighbors and talk about life back in the old country. In fact, Joe speaks Italian only when he calls his parents on the telephone or when he visits them every weekend. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo are sad because their son speaks so little Italian. They are afraid he's forgetting his language, his culture, and his country. If we look at the pictures again, that makes sense now. The first line of pictures, we see Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo speaking Italian, reading Italian, shopping Italian, speaking Italian with their friends, talking about life back in Italy. The second line of pictures, we see Joe speaking English, reading English, listening to English, going shopping at big American shops, and hanging out with his friends, speaking English. And the last line of pictures, they are speaking on the telephone. Joe does speak a little Italian only on the telephone or when he visits them in their home. So the last picture, they are sad because they are worried that Joe is forgetting his Italian culture. Very sad for the parents. Okay, let's move on then to page 84. The first activity is the reading checkup. What's the answer? Number 1. Where do Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo live? They live in a small Italian neighborhood in New York City. Number 2. Where does Joe live? He lives in a suburb outside of the city. Number 3. What language do Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo usually speak? They speak Italian. Number 4. What language does Joe usually speak? He usually speaks English. Number 5. What do Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo read? They read Italian newspapers. Number 6. What does Joe read? He reads American newspapers. Number 7. What do Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo listen to? They listen to Italian radio programs. Number 8. What does Joe listen to? He listens to American radio programs. Number 9. Where do Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo shop? They shop at a small Italian grocery store around the corner from their home. Number 10. Where does Joe shop? He shops at large American shopping malls and supermarkets outside the city. Excellent. Let's move on to another reading activity. Read the sentence and choose the correct word. Number 1. Mrs. Dicarlo reads the Italian newspaper. The answer is reads. Mrs. Dicarlo reads the Italian newspaper. Number 2. Mr. Dicarlo shops at the Italian grocery store. The answer is shops. Mr. Dicarlo shops at the Italian grocery store. Number 3. They lives in New York City. The answer is live. They live in New York City. Number 4. Joe lives outside the city. The answer is lives. Joe lives outside the city. Number 5. He speaks English. The answer is speaks. He speaks English. Number 6. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo listens to the radio. The answer is listen. Mr. and Mrs. Dicarlo listen to the radio. Number 7. They visits their friends every day. The answer is visit. They visit their friends every day. Number 8. Their friends talk or talks about life back in the old country. The answer is talk. Number 9. Joe calls his parents on the telephone. The answer is calls. Joe calls his parents on the telephone. And number 10. Joe's friends speaks English. The answer is speak. Joe's friends speak English. They speak English. Well done. Let's move on to a listening activity. Next, we have a listening activity. Listen and choose the correct answer. Number 1, my brother lives in Chicago. My brother lives in Chicago. The answer is B. Good job. Lives. Number 2, my name is Peter. I work in an office. My name is Peter. I work in an office. The answer is A. Work. Good job. Number 3. This is my friend Carla. She speaks Italian. This is my friend Carla. She speaks Italian. Very good. B. Number 4. My sister drives a bus in Chicago. My sister drives a bus in Chicago. The answer is B. Again, she drives. Number 5. We read the newspaper every day. We read the newspaper every day. The answer is A. Read. We read. Number 6. My parents visit their friends every weekend. My parents visit their friends every weekend. The answer is A. They visit. Number 7. Charlie cooks in a Greek restaurant. Charlie cooks in a Greek restaurant. The answer is B. Cooks. He cooks. Number 8. My brother and I paint houses. My brother and I paint houses. The answer is A. We paint. And number 9. My friend Betty calls me every day. My friend Betty calls me every day. The answer is B. Calls. And the last one, number 10. My parents usually shop at the mall. My parents usually shop at the mall. That's right. A. Shop. They shop. So the thing to think about with all these answers is the subject. I go, play, eat, drink, buy. You, we, they, it's the same. I go, we go, they go. If it's he or she, he goes, she goes. She plays, she calls, she visits. There's that S sound at the end of the verb. I speak English. She speaks English. So that is something to keep in mind as we move on to the next page and we tell a new story about Mrs. Kowalski. As you can see, As you can see, there are 3 lines of pictures. Looks very similar in pattern to the previous story of the Dicarlo family. But this time, the mother is single. It's Mrs. Kowalski and her son and daughter-in-law. So the parent is singular, but the children are plural. So how would we start this story? Mrs. Kowalski lives in a small Polish neighborhood in Chicago. She reads, she listens, etc. Okay. On the second line, when we talk about the children, we would say, her son and his wife live in a small suburb outside the city. They read, they listen, etc. And the last line, they only speak Polish when they call her mother, etc. So your job is to use this pattern, use this story, and create a Flipgrid video telling me about Mrs. Kowalski and her son and his wife, Kathy. If I have a look at the information. Yes, the mother is called Mrs. Kowalski, her son is called Michael, and his wife is called Kathy. So Mrs. Kowalski lives in an old Polish neighborhood in Chicago. She's upset about her son Michael and his wife Kathy. Use the story on page 83 as a model and tell me the story about Mrs. Kowalski. Okay? The pattern is similar, but be careful with the subject. They or she. They or he. Okay. Good luck with that. Upload your story to your Flipgrid video. So tell me the story of Mrs. Kowalski, her son Michael, and his wife Kathy in your Flipgrid video. Excellent. Well done this week. That was great study. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye. So your job is to use this pattern, use this story, and create a Flipgrid video telling me about Mrs. Kowalski and her son and his wife, Kathy. If I have a look at the information. Yes, the mother is called Mrs. Kowalski, her son is called Michael, and his wife is called Kathy. So Mrs. Kowalski lives in an old Polish neighborhood in Chicago. She's upset about her son Michael and his wife Kathy. Use the story on page 83 as a model and tell me the story about Mrs. Kowalski. Okay? The pattern is similar, but be careful with the subject. They or she. They or he. Okay. Good luck with that. Upload your story to your Flipgrid video. So tell me the story of Mrs. Kowalski, her son Michael, and his wife Kathy in your Flipgrid video. Excellent. Well done this week. That was great study. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.